Good morning, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Our clergy team is so delighted to be back with you. We are in the Gantt Chapel taping this on Wednesday morning, September 11th, the 23-year anniversary of the day. Just want to acknowledge that, be mindful of that. Very somber day, and also it is being shown on the 14th of September. This is our first class of the new year. Rosh Hashanah is coming all too soon, as you all know. And so just to frame this class, before we do the prayer for thanking God for Torah, wanted to come up with something that provides uplift. And my own definition of uplift is that there would be something I can do, something you can do, something we can do that would make us a better human being, that would make us a better spouse, make us a better parent, make us a better child, make us a better sibling, make us a better friend. Something that I could do, we could do, you could do to take our game up as a human being, become a better version of ourselves. And as I was marinating in our high holiday texts, I found that in the person of Elkanah, who is the husband of Hannah and the husband of Peninnah, the father of Samuel, and we encounter him in the first paragraph of the first day Haftorah for Rosh Hashanah. So we're going to be talking about what we can learn from Elkanah, about how to become better human beings. So let's thank God for the gift of learning Torah together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Ba'arev na Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu, u'b'fi amcha beit Yisrael, ונהיה אנחנו וצאצאינו וצאצאי עמך בית ישראל, כולנו יודעי שמך ולמדי תורתך לשמה, ברוך אתה אדוני המלמד תורה לעמו ישראל, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה. So the line that we're going to focus on is a familiar part of a familiar story, but let's try to bring fresh eyes to it. As is a not uncommon biblical trope, a man has two wives. Elkanah has Hannah and Peninnah. As is not an unfamiliar biblical trope, Peninnah is extremely fertile, has child after child, and Hannah cannot get pregnant. The text adds twice that Peninnah taunts Hannah. And then I'm just going to read this and ask us to put this under the magnifying glass. This happened year after year. Every time Hannah went up to the house of Adonai, the other, Peninnah, would taunt her, so that Hannah wept and would not eat. Her husband Elkanah said to her, Hannah, why are you crying, and why aren't you eating? Why are you so sad? Am I not more devoted to you than 10 sons? Now, just a couple things, and then we can get into it. We know that his words of consolation didn't work because, she's next praying with utter brokenness at the temple of Shiloh. The high priest Eli doesn't get her, but you could see she's still broken. She's not consoled by her husband's words. The other thing that I will just bring to the conversation before we get into it is Elkanah, according to the commentary, and I brought just some snippets of that on page 2, he's a tzaddik. He's not only a tzaddik, some consider him a prophet. He's a mensch. They talk about the fact that he's introduced with a long genealogy, that whose name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Tsuf. Why the lineage? And the commentators on page 2 of the handout say that when you have that many begats, it's to show real yichus. This was a man of consequence. This was a man of substance. This was a mensch. This was a prophet. So, number one, he loves his wife. Number two, he's a person of substance, of consequence. Jewish rabbinical tradition regards him as a real tzaddik. And so let's start the conversation with, he sees his wife crushed for obvious reasons. He must know about Peninnah taunting her. He must know how broken she is. Before we get to Hannah, let's get to Elkanah. Why does he say what he says?
Yeah, I want to offer things. First of all, he may not have known that she was being taunted. The other thing is this also points to the the Venus and Mars thing, that men are oftentimes clueless about women's inner machinations, the way that they think, the way that they feel. Men think differently than men. Men emote differently than women. So I think that is actually obvious from this text. He's trying his best to be there for her, and what he's doing is probably even making it worse.
Elisa, Michelle, would be so interested to Dan's comment that different genders have different perspectives. How do you read this?
It's really interesting. As we were walking in, Elias asked me, coming back to this text this year, does it have a different resonance that we're out of a chapter of childlessness and into a chapter of sort of looking back? And it's really interesting for me because the experience of yearning and wanting a child, even though both Solomon and I felt it strongly, we experienced it really differently. And throughout, he was much more hopeful and much more optimistic than I was. And so I have no idea what's happening in this moment, whether Elkanah, is trying to understand. He thinks maybe that Hannah is worried about who will care for her, and so he's responding to that worry. It's hard to know, and it's hard to know, is he on a different wavelength, or is he just experiencing it differently, or is he responsive to her? It's very interesting to me, and I don't, the space that I go back to when I look at this is just that when you're in that broken place, I don't think there's not much anyone can say to make you feel better or to access that pain. It's just, it is. And so often we just want to move people out of their pain and give them something to feel better about. But I think more often what's helpful is just being present with the pain and letting it be.
So, but before I just engage that, and then Michelle, I want to come to you, but I just want to engage and understand what you're saying, Elisa. If you were married to Elkanah at that time, what would you have wanted him to say or do that would have been helpful to you?
Oh, honey, this is just so painful. It's so hard that your kiddo hasn't come into this world, and especially with Peninnah taunting you this way. I just want you to know I love you, and I'm here for you, and I'm with you in this brokenness.
And that, to modern ears in 2024, is just so much wiser and more helpful than, why are you crying? Why aren't you eating? Why are you so sad? Am I not more devoted to you than 10 sons? So the question is, why does Elkanah do what he does? Is it a clueless thing? Is it just sensibilities have changed thing? Is it we can't impose our mores 2,000 years later on them? What can we learn from Elkanah, who is this tzaddik, according to Jewish tradition, his inability to do what you just did, which was so much obviously wiser?
But everyone does that. I mean, the number of dinners that I sat through where people would say, oh, it's all right. Are you eating? You should eat these green vegetables. Greens have lots of folates that are really good for babies. It's stress. It's really stress. So if you would just be less stressed, don't you know that your husband just loves you so much? If you could just focus on your husband's love for you, then I'm sure you'll get pregnant. People just do that because
Elkanah today.
We all want to make people better, and we do this all the time, whatever the challenge. And it's not just about fertility, but whatever people's challenges. I think it's a real human struggle. We want to fix things for people, and so instead of just hearing where people are coming from, we want to people say oh, I'm having such trouble giving away this furniture, and instead of saying oh, that's really rough, we're have you tried this organization? Have you tried this organization? I can help you give it away. Have you tried? And it's no, I wasn't sharing because I wanted you to help me do that. I just was sharing because it's frustrating, and I wanted you to know I'm frustrated.
Wait, I just want to point out. So
Can I defend Elkanah here?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, before we do that,
so I was thinking about what Elisa just said. It's beautiful. We already have that in our tradition. You go to a Shiva house, you don't try to make it better. You sit and you listen, and you just be there with people.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah,
Michelle.
I'm just going to amplify the human challenge here, and it's one of not being in the same place, right? Elkanah has children. Elkanah has, one could argue, why is he with Peninnah? It's a story that has always pained me deeply because my Hebrew name is Peninnah. Right? And here he is, and he's experiencing his world, and he kind of, there's a piece of Hannah's world that he just can't get.
Even though they're married.
Even though they're married, and there's
And he loves her.
And he loves her. He loves her so much.
And he can't get her.
And he's not seeing the world with the same glasses. And as much as he loves her, he doesn't experience what she's experiencing in the same way that she's experiencing it.
And Michelle, that just feels so real and true and relatable and profound. And I guess I have only one question for you. What does that teach us today? What's the learning?
To me, I think it teaches the great humility that we need to bring and that we often fail to bring in our encounters with others. I think to pick up on Eliza's, well, let me help you sell your furniture thing, right? It, on any level, I think we often think that we understand why someone is doing what they're doing. It invites, to me, and all of us need to cultivate this more, a curiosity response. I think we're missing the opportunity, not just to say, I'm so sorry, it sounds really hard, but to say, tell me more.
So let me just pause, and Elias, I want to hear your view, but I just want to sum up. What I'm hearing from you, Eliza, is this story is about the all-too-human impulse, and it's not from 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, it's including today. I want to help you solve your problem. There's an inability to sit with, an inability to just listen to, an inability to be with, and a temptation to rush to a cure. Let me solve. And what I hear from you, Michelle, is just so profound. How do you know a person, including how do you know your own spouse? And here you are, you could share a life, share a bed, share everything, and somehow, and love each other. And the loving spouse does not really get the beloved spouse. And that's just so, I think, real and true. Elias, how did you read this story?
I read it a little different, although I agree with all of you what you said. I think that if you look carefully, Elkanah turns the story to himself. All right? He's saying, wait, this is not happening to me. I'm good to everybody. Why is she not happy with me? You know, I have two wives. I have to dedicate the same energy, love, and time to both of them. So why is she, instead of trying to recognize her pain, he's looking at himself saying, oh, my self-esteem is hurt here.
Right.
It's like, what's going on? She doesn't like me. What's going on? She's weeping because I don't give her enough love, so he's not able to see her pain. Or he reads the same situation differently.
Great. So let me just summarize and why I think this is a really good lead-off text for the year, a few weeks before Rosh Hashanah. You have the tendency to, it's about me, it's about me, it's about me, what do you think about me? Let me make this about me. You have the tendency of, I want to solve your problem. I want to rush in for a cure. You have the problem of, I really don't even know you, even though I love you and I'm married to you. And you have the problem of just general lenses and differences of life experience, including gender, etc. So I wanted to share with you, to share with you and also to read this story in light of a book that came out by David Brooks called How to Know a Person, which is a superb book. It's my favorite of his books. And here's his simple claim, and I had never thought about it before, but now having read his book, I've thought about it and I agree with what he says. He says better listening, more empathetic listening. Listening that's not about me, what do you think about me, but it's about you. Listening that enables me to just be with and not solve. Listening that enables me to see and understand is actually a skill that we can all get better at. We can all get better at it. And that if we get better at the skill of listening, we won't do the things that Elkanah did. And actually the part of, after the colon is, it's how to know a person, colon, the art of seeing others deeply and being seen deeply. The art of seeing and being seen deeply. So, and he has the following thing about wisdom, and I want to read that, and then we're going to take a look at 2 stories that he offers where he failed to listen well. And I wanted to think about how we can listen better, and all of us can listen better, and therefore do better at seeing and being seen. So he writes as following. He talks about wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom is not knowing about physics or geography. Wisdom is knowing about people. Wisdom is the ability to see deeply into who people are and how they should move in the complex situations of life. And then he writes, the wise person, he says, I used to have a conventional view of wisdom. Conventional view. The wise person is that lofty sage who doles out life-altering advice in the manner of Yoda, Dumbledore, or Solomon. The wise person knows how to solve your problems, knows what job you should take, it can tell you whether or not you should marry the person you're dating. We're all attracted to this vision of wisdom because we all want easy answers delivered on a silver platter. Yet when I think of the wise people in my own life now, I realize it's not the people capable of delivering a sparkling lecture or dropping a life-altering maxim that pops first to mind. Now I take the more or less opposite view of wisdom. I've come to believe that wise people don't tell us what to do. They start by witnessing our story. They take the anecdotes, rationalizations, and episodes we tell and see us in a noble struggle. They see the way we're navigating the dialectics of life, intimacy versus independence, control versus uncertainty, and understand that our current self is just where we are right now, part of a long continuum of growth. The really good confidants, the people we go to when we are troubled, are more like coaches than philosopher kings. So, before we look at a couple of cases he offers where he failed his own example of wisdom, his own standard, I wanted to just step back and ask what you think about that definition. Wisdom is not having the answers. Wisdom is about listening, witnessing stories, and being able to be kind of a coach who can help people come up with their own truths in their own noble struggle. What do you think about that definition of wisdom?
I wish they would teach that in cantorial school.
Say more.
Well, I don't need to tell you this, but one of the biggest challenges we as clergy, is to serve a congregation of 4,000 souls and to be able to be for them all the time and to really be able to listen and to empathize and be coaches and not problem solving. It's very difficult. It takes a skill, but also it takes a tremendous amount of time.
Yeah.
I have a question about that. So if someone comes to you with an issue, do you...
I just say go to the rabbis. Simple.
Yes.
Do you have something you want to sing with me? Just talk to the rabbis. Goodbye.
Perfect. Yes, exactly. That's what I would do. No, so do you try to problem solve, or do you try to hear what the underlying issue might be? It's complex.
Are you asking me personally, or are you asking everybody?
This is actually for all of us, for all of us to think about, because I think that David Brooks is exactly right.
Right. So I mean, just to say, and then Michelle, I want to hear your voices. I'm 63 this summer, and reading this book and life experience makes some words that didn't used to be bad words, like tell, T-E-L-L, bad word. Prescribe, bad word. Solve, bad word. Problem solve, really bad word. That is to say, if you accept this definition of wisdom, wisdom is not, I have all the answers, I'm on a perch, like feed me your challenges and now click, 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 and I have, and I'm a wise Yoda, here's the answer. That's a bad model. That it's really about not doing that, very rarely, if ever, telling, prescribing, or problem solving, and mostly sitting with, and mostly witnessing, and mostly asking questions, and mostly helping the other person figure it out on their own with some clarifying questions, all of which takes
Sigmund Freud will be very
all of which
proud of
takes
you.
time. Anyway, but that's what he is saying. So, guys, what do you think, Michelle? and Lisa?
So I love that. It's unassailable wisdom. And I wonder if it's 100% true 100% of the time, and whether it completely fits our Jewish paradigm.
Say more.
I often think about, our halakhic tradition as kind of coming in and saying, actually, there are answers and guides and stories and wisdom that you should be looking for and towards as you're looking for an answer. And I find in my own experiences when I've sought counsel or help or advice, sometimes it's the most helpful thing to have somebody just ask the questions and hold the space and affirm. And sometimes, right, I actually just want you to guide me and tell me what I can do to be better and do better. And, this was such an evocative topic. I had a chance to look a little bit at some of the commentators on this story. And there's an incredible one by the Malbim who looks a couple sentences back from where you started us at Elkanah giving Hannah just one portion. And ask the question, why now, right? Why does she go pray now? He's been doing this thing. And the answer, he reads a tone of voice into that one portion that suddenly Elkanah actually is experiencing the despair with Hannah. And we're kind of giving him a bad rap by saying, oh, he didn't understand. And he's actually trying to control something because he finally sees, oh my God, it's only one portion. And in response to that one portion, what inspires her to suddenly get up and go, she finally realizes that he's not going to be able to solve this problem. His sense of, oh my God, right, this is bad. We've got the one portion and one portion only. She then realizes, I have to do something. And it's because he's able to at least according through the Malbim's lens, because he's able to be kind of more present and more directive in that moment. Yes, what you're experiencing is legitimate, that she's then able to go out and kind of solve her challenge.
But that read feels very David Brooks here. In other words, that the one portion is, I'm with you. Right. The one portion is not why are you so sad, why aren't you eating, aren't I worth more than 10 sons, I can solve your problem, here I am, what about me? It is, here's one portion, I'm with you.
He doesn't tell her what to do.
Right.
Right? And so on that front, absolutely,
right.
David Brooks. He doesn't say, okay, now you should go out to the temple, but he does say to her, right, go do what you think is best to do. I think she does.
Yeah. Michelle, I think your words really contain a particularly profound challenge, insight, gloss, which is halacha is all about tell and prescribe. Halacha is all about tell what to do, and rabbis, to the extent that they are supposed to be guides of halacha, are supposed to tell people what to do. I mean, halacha is a path. It's a straight path, and walk the path. Don't get off the derech. Don't get off the derech. Don't be an individual. Don't get off the derech. Walk the path. And I think you're absolutely right to point out, and I hadn't seen it, so thank you, that there is really a creative tension and a creative contradiction between the animating force of halacha, which is tell, and prescribe, and David Brooks' view of wisdom, which is not about tell, but about ask and help you come up with your own solutions.
And the
intermediate, I think they're creative, there's a tension there.
And the intermediate zone is kind of the one that we're experiencing in this story, which is kind of look to the stories, the examples, those empty spaces in between to try to help us discern.
Yeah. But I don't think we're being entirely fair to halacha, because the way that Jews do halakha is really different than the way other traditions do halakha. There are many traditions where this is the rule and it says this and you do this. That's not how we engage with halakha. If you really study halakha deeply, what you find is not tell. What you find is a set of ideals. What you find is a description of possibility. What you find is a tension between what you should think about and how you should move. And even within our most, like, if you look up Maizmanim and you just look for, like, what time do you say Shema, you'll have so many different times that you say Shema that are all due based on different understandings. And so I think even in our most tell moments, we're not a tell people. We're a have a conversation people. We're a I want to think about
And one
this.
more thing in defense of halakha, so many of us all the time prescribe halakha, because when somebody wants to get married or somebody passes away, we prescribe halakha. But sometimes we are not aware of what that halakha means until we experience it ourselves. In my own personal story, 11 months saying Kaddish for my mother. Why 11 months? Isn't it too much? And then it felt like it was too much at some point. And then at the end, I didn't want to get, that to be over. So halakha, it has its own beauty that was created by a set of ideals and people who put it together. And there are reasons to do that.
Well, before we get to David Brooks, and just to respond to this flow of the conversation, when are you ever asked by a congregant where what they really want is the answer? Like, tell me what to do. Are you ever asked, like, legitimately, like, I don't want a conversation, I don't want competing considerations, just give me the answer? Are you ever asked that? Because I am asked that repeatedly, only one time. There's only one issue where people, and this happens many times a year, every year, which is, when is my last day of saying Kaddish for my father? When is the last day of saying Kaddish for my mother? When is the 11 months up? Is it 11 months or is it 11 months and a day? My dad died and was buried on September 14th. When do I stop saying Kaddish? That is the only tell moment I face. And other than that, I don't. What about you guys? I mean, do you get tell moments from more people?
I do get similar ritual questions like
Right.
exactly this, when is that, et cetera.
Right.
Like
Okay.
you, but
So I want to close our class with just, I loved this last little bit that we're going to look at from Brooks, which is where, he's prescribed the standard of wisdom, and where he elsewhere in the book, he says this. He says, I love this. He says that if you're listening really well, it burns calories. I mean, metaphorically, it burns calories. Like, listening really well is like a 10K. I mean, it's an intense thing, and it's easy to screw up, and it's easy to get it wrong. And I wanted to close by sharing his own examples of where he failed. So, Elisa, we're on page 3 of the handout, and he has 2 conversations, and he critiques himself in both.
For example, yesterday, the day before writing these final paragraphs, I had 2 long conversations. I had lunch with a young woman who was leaving her current job, moving across the country with her husband, and trying to figure out what to do with her life. Then I had dinner with a government official who was facing an enormous amount of partisan criticism. That these people even came to me for conversation and advice is a sign of progress, I suppose. People rarely approach the old David ready to display vulnerability and seeking accompaniment. But in each case, I now realize I missed the moment. There was a crucial moment in each conversation, and I did not have the presence of mind to pause the flow of talk so we could linger and go deeper on what was just said. At lunch, the woman said she was going to spend the next 4 months soul-searching. I could have stopped the conversation and asked her what exactly she meant. How was she going to do this soul-searching? Had she ever done this kind of soul-searching before in her life? What did she hope to find? Similarly, my dinner partner mentioned that he was terrible at staying present with people. He'd be in the middle of an important meeting with someone and his mind was always going back to reconsider something that had already happened or leaping forward to think about something that he had to do later in that day. That was an important confession. I should have stopped him to ask him how he had become aware that he had these weaknesses. Had this flaw marred his relationships? How did he hope to address the problem? After this one day's encounters, I realized that I have to work on my ability to spot the crucial conversational moments in real time. I have to learn how to ask the questions that will keep us in them, probing for understanding.
What do you think of what you just read?
It feels so real. And it feels like that's so often the case, that some offhand remark that someone makes, or, in particular, my CPE supervisors used to talk about doorknob conversations, that you'd have an entire meeting with someone, and the moment they put their hand on the doorknob, they would say to you, oh, by the way, we're getting a divorce. And then, you're like,
Right.
what, you would want to start with that? We had this whole meeting, we're talking about all these other things, or whatever it is, that there's these incidental moments that if you're really listening, you have to drill into.
And
They
do you
can easily
find
get
at least
by.
often that people will meet with you, and the stated ostensible reason they're meeting with you is not the real reason they're meeting with you, and it takes you a while to get through the ostensible stuff to the real stuff?
Always. And interesting also, sometimes I find that there's a real core, deeply felt subject we should be talking about, and people just want to stay in the superficial, not real stuff too. Both are true. That you'll say, I don't really think that you're upset that this tissue box is a not extra soft lotiony tissue box. I think there's something else going on.
Right.
But they're like, no, I hate tissues. And so how do you listen in a way that helps people to also listen to themselves?
Yeah, I'm going to twist a little bit the thing. This is clergy therapy, obviously. So on Shabbat morning, after I do Musaf, after I paid close, detailed attention to your sermons,
Yes.
I go and I do Musaf, and I want to go to Kiddush to have a wonderful bagel with tuna salad or something like that.
Yes.
And then somebody approaches me and starts telling me stuff about, you know that melody you sang, I used to do it anyways. And then there is somebody else who comes who wants to talk to you. That's a challenge, because you have to focus on what the person is telling you without thinking, what does the other person want?
Right.
It's I'm sure it happens to you all the time, that a couple of people want to talk to you, and you need to be present exactly where the person you're talking with and not thinking ahead.
Hey, Elias, thank you for that, because I think we can't solve it, but you named a real challenge with Kiddush. Kiddush is a big challenge, and it's a big challenge for congregants, and it's a big challenge for clergy. And now we can understand why. Because the kinds of conversations that Brooks is talking about take time, and they take focus, and they take, oh, you just said soul searching, ding, 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 ding. That's kind of the doorknobby thing. Soul searching. Tell us more about soul searching. Tell me more about soul searching. When have you done soul searching, et cetera, et cetera? All of that takes time and focus. By the way, it's also best if you're sitting down and they're sitting down. It's also best if there's not a lot of distractions. And when you're in Kiddush, you don't have the time, you don't have the focus, you're both standing up, you're trying to eat a bagel and tuna, they're trying to eat a bagel and tuna, and there's other people who are waiting. So it raises the question about whether Kiddush is the moment not to have that conversation, but to connect and to say, hey, let's have that conversation at some other time. Michelle and Dan, any wrap-up thoughts as we wrap up?
Yeah, I was going to say what Brooks just in that last section says. I don't know how you learn that. You're a 20-minute conversation, and then after you just say, oh, it would have been better if I had stopped here and thought about this and thought about that. In the middle of that moment, how do you find that moment? And I don't know if that's a learned skill. I mean, I think he indicates that it is.
Right.
But I'm not sure how one learns that. I think it is important to try to figure out how that can happen.
I want to thank you for the topic, because every year we encounter this text year after year after year. And I'd say most of the time I look through the lens of Hannah and her experience here, and looking through Elkanah's eyes here, or really looking at Elkanah and trying to understand what motivates him and what brings him to both fail and to succeed, which are the pieces of him that we should be looking at, was super helpful. It opens up an entirely new perspective. And I just want to say, as I go into Rosh Hashanah, that that's a sort of an approach that I think all of us can be helped by, if we're not getting in the primary text as we're looking at it the thing that is most helpful to us. look again, look at some of the minor characters, look through, from a different perspective, because it really is true that when we turn it and turn it, Torah has so much to teach us.
Well, since I don't believe in clean endings and bows on boxes and ribbons and tidy, I don't do tidy ever in life or in classes, let me end with a not tidy question, which is, and just in a minute, and speaking of minor characters, to channel the energy of your last comment, why would Peninnah taunt? And why would Peninnah taunt multiple times? It's not once, it's multiple. So here is Hannah, who is so crushed and broken. Here is Peninnah, so richly blessed, another baby. Why taunt and why taunt again? What is going on with that?
So I want to defend Peninnah, which is a weird thing because I've met many a Peninnah in my life and did
You
not
have?
experience that. Oh my gosh. That's a surprise? Yes, all the time. People say the worst things at all moments. It's just a reality. And I want to just say that there's two levels, right? Sometimes people say genuinely horrible things. And I think there's a skill of, like, I want to say sort of to this David Brooks piece, you don't always have to listen deeply. Like, if somebody says something that's really cruel to you, you don't have to say, like, what I hear you saying is that you think I look really ugly. Like, that's just not, you don't have to say that. And you don't have to be, like, listening deep. You can actually just be like, I'm not in this, and I'm not able to listen right now. But I want to say, I think there's a world, taunting there's maybe some objective taunting, but I also think that there's taunting that is in the eye of the beholder. And when you're very broken about something, it's very easy to take everything very personally. And so there are things, I could imagine Peninnah saying, like, look, my children are your children. Like, don't feel bad. Like, we can share these kids. And that being experienced as, like, how could you say that? Or saying, like, enjoy your life. Enjoy getting to sleep every night and getting to read books when you want to read books. And her being like, how could you say that to me when all I want is to be sleepless with a baby? And so I just want to say, I think it's really particularly challenging because when we are most broken and most raw, it's easy to experience everything as a taunt and everything as a painful moment. And that's a moment where we have to check and be like listening objectively, not listening for hidden meanings or for what they were trying to say, but just like, was that actually a taunt? And sometimes there are taunts. I want to just say, like, there are taunts, but I have that question.
Wow.
Two things I want to say quickly. One is that if we step away from the story, every day you encounter people who brag about things, and they will do it in your face, number one. Number two, I didn't read it anywhere, but it could be that Peninnah felt that Elkanah loved more Hannah than her. And that could be jealousy.
And to
Wow.
me, I want to thank you for that redemptive read of Peninnah. But and I think there's so much truth in what you're saying, that the extreme sensitivity that we have, in fact, it lines up with some of what the rabbinic commentators say about Peninnah, that she would say, well, are you getting your children ready for the day, right? Did you buy a shirt for your children, which could be a taunt, or it could be, did you have to do this? I have to do this all the time. And it could have been more about Peninnah than about Hannah. But, right? But I also want to see the reality of the pain that Peninnah causes. And I think that that's an invitation to all of us to examine the way that we move in the world, because there are many times that what to us is something joyful really can be very hurtful to somebody else. And it's probably an invitation to do a little bit more reflection in this new year.
Amen. So we began with the search for uplift. And I think when you put the complexity and mess of human encounter and of family life and of different aspirations and agendas, some of which are being fulfilled and others of which are ever elusive, which is the Hannah, Peninnah, Elkanah, Samuel story, and you put it up to David Brooks' book that just came out in 2023, we see that all of us have, the challenging news is a lot of room to grow. The really good news is a lot of room to grow. And uplift is found in becoming ever better versions of ourselves. Shabbat Shalom. See you next week.
Shabbat shalom.
Amen.